like to begin this morning by thanking Eric Lejeune for those great words this morning, and thanking our church's Creation Justice Committee for encouraging us to become a Creation Justice church. Now, some of you know many years ago, well before I was the pastor here, this church designated itself as a whole earth church. You may have seen that in our mission statement. It's printed in our bulletin each and every week. And what a whole earth church means is that we are a green congregation. That we are a congregation that's committed to recycling and to caring for our environment. Well, Creation Justice Church is a new terminology. And really it takes it one step further. It says that caring for our environment is actually a justice issue. And in your bulletin today, you received a brochure from the UCC, which explains what creation justice is, and it goes through all of the environmental injustices that the UCC is addressing. Everything from the lead poisoning in the water, to the effects of global warming, to pollution's effect on our health, causing cancer, and so on. The next 3 Sundays, our church, along with many other UCC churches in the United States, is going to be focusing on God's creation. Now, our art guild did a wonderful job this week. They designed this banner for us that reminds us that God is still speaking to us through creation. And as you probably guessed from our opening song and our readings, and from this beautiful mobile that's above my head, that we're focusing today on water. And it's a wonderful one to begin with, because actually the very first verse of the Bible says, before God formed the earth, when the earth was still formless and void, God's Spirit was resting and moving on the waters. That the waters existed first before anything was formed. And so that's where we begin with the water. We know that our planet is mostly made up of water, and our bodies are mostly made up of water. Human beings and animals and plants, all living things, we are dependent upon water for survival. We can go a few weeks without food, but without water we would not survive a few days. Water is vital for life. Now, we know that water is something that many of us take for granted. We can turn on the tap, we can go to the grocery store and buy bottles of water, but there are many people in this world to whom access to water, clean drinking water, is not so available to them. Water is very sacred. In fact, most faith traditions use water as part of their sacred rites and their spiritual rituals, like we do for baptism. And in the Bible, there are over 500 references to water. And mostly those references use water as a symbol for the divine. I've shared with you before that the word affluent means in the flow. We often think an affluent person or an affluent life has to do with money, but it doesn't. It means in the flow. When your life is in the flow of the divine, you are living an affluent life. We sang this morning our opening hymn, "Come to the water." It said, all who seek, come to the water. Because that's where we find God. The water is the source of life, and so is God. And I think that's why Eric explained so beautifully why we are drawn to the water. Because it really is where we connect with the divine, when we connect with the water. And how blessed are we to be living here in, how Eric described it, a little paradise where we have the Kalamazoo River and Lake Michigan. We know that this is Native American land. The word Saugatuck is a Native American word which means the mouth of the river. And as we heard in our words of integration this morning, our Native American ancestors thought that the water had soul, that it was a spirit. And Jesus described it the same way. Jesus said, it's living water, that it's alive. And it is our calling to take care of that water, because it is the source of life. It's the source of God. I loved in our words of integration this morning how it said that animals, when they need to heal, either rest or go to the water. The water is so healing. Jacques Cousteau's granddaughter, Celine Cousteau, said, "We're beginning to learn that our brains are hardwired to react positively to water, and that being near it can calm and connect us, can increase innovation and insight, and can even heal what is broken." Water has such a healing effect on us. And the poet E.E. Cummings said, "Whatever we lose, like a you or a me, it's always ourself that we find in the sea." The water is where we find ourselves, where we connect with God, with the divine. And we know that when we are close to water, when we're looking out at water, when we're in the water, even sometimes just listening to the water, the waves, the rain falling, a fountain, a babbling brook, it refreshes us and revives us. We feel reborn in the water. And I think that is why John the Baptist baptized with water. Christians today have a calling to protect the water. And that's why I'm often really baffled why so many Christians don't seem very concerned about the environment. Many Christians today are more outraged over the disrespect shown to a man-made object like the American flag than they are outraged by the disrespect that's being shown to our planet. God is calling us as Christians to care for all of God's creation. A recent survey showed that the majority of people who do not believe in global warming are evangelical Christians. They are the ones who don't believe what's happening. And isn't that interesting? Now, why is that? Well, the survey said that some use the Bible quote that says that God gave us dominion over the planet, so we can use up its resources. Others say that many evangelical Christians today think the world is coming to an end very soon, and that Jesus is going to come back and we're going to have a new planet, so we can use up all the resources right now. I think to deny the effect that man has had on the environment is sinful. The reason the waters are polluted is because of us. We did it. Dominion in the Bible doesn't mean domination. It means stewardship. When God gave us dominion over the planet, God meant to be caretakers of this gift of creation that God gave us. We are to take care of it and ensure that it will last for eternity. This is heaven on earth. Jesus' whole purpose, his whole mission was to say, you're living in heaven. He said it's at hand, it's here and now. This is it. His focus wasn't on the next life. His focus was on this life. And I believe he is calling us to make sure that we care for this planet that has been gifted to us and that God has entrusted to our care. We must take responsibility. It's our carelessness, it's our selfishness, and it's our greed that has caused the destruction of this planet. We know that our neighbors in Flint, the water crisis that they are experiencing is because of greed. In his most recent book, former President Jimmy Carter said that the United States is by far the world's leading polluter. That we make up just 2% of the world's population, and yet we consume almost 30% of the world's fuel. Now, European countries decades ago embraced recycling programs, and they embraced programs that would reduce the emissions of carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases. In 2005, at the World Summit in Kyoto, Japan, 125 countries signed an agreement to reduce the amount of gases that would go into the environment. And they actually, in that agreement, said that there would be fines for any countries that exceeded those amounts of excessive gas into the environment. One country would not sign that agreement, the United States of America. And their reasoning was that it would affect our economy, that it would hurt our industries, who would have to pay those excessive fines, and that would affect their shareholders' profits, and it would hurt our economy. 125 nations signed that agreement. We didn't. And then we wonder why we're so disliked around the world. We are called as Christians to be people of justice. And so what our Creation Justice Committee is going to do for us is not only keep us abreast of what's happening in our country and what's happening in our world, but to help educate us so that we know how to take action. Now, I know it can seem overwhelming to say, how can we fix all of this? How can we do this? Well, one of the first steps we can take is through prayer. I know a lot of people don't like hearing that, but it actually is the first step. We have to be still and know first before we can take action. And we know that our words and our thoughts have a great effect on the water. It's actually biblical. Think of John the Baptist. Think of Moses parting the sea. Think of Jesus transforming water into wine. That's how they did it. Now, science is showing that our thoughts and our words have great power over the water. Some of you may be familiar with the work of the Japanese scientist, Dr. Masuro Emoto. Dr. Emoto did studies with water. He took jars of water and he froze them to look at the ice crystals that were formed. On some of the jars, Dr. Emoto and his team pasted positive words. Words like, I love you, and thank you. And in that room they played beautiful, uplifting music. And he and his lab assistants said prayers to the water. Then they took some jars of water and they put negative words on them. I hate you. They played heavy metal music. And they sent negative thoughts to the water. And what ended up happening is amazing. The crystals that were formed from the positive room were absolutely beautiful. They were snowflake-like structures. The ones in the other room were misshapen and deformed and ugly. This is not New Age mumbo-jumbo. This is science. You can see the crystals If you Google Dr. Emoto's name, or even buy his book, which is called The Healing Power of Water. So if you're saying, what can I do right now? Well, what you have the power to do right now is you have the power right now to pray for the water. You can, every time you shower, every time you look out at the lake, every time you take a drink of water, you can consciously say thank you. Thank you for this gift of life. And send that out. Even apologize to the water for the harm that we've done to it. Of course, this is not going to solve our water problem, but it's the first step. And then we go and we educate ourselves and we take action to see what it is that we can do to effect change right now. So I'm so grateful to our Creation Justice team, and I'm so grateful to the United Church of Christ for their commitment to caring for the environment. This is a wonderful world, a world that God has entrusted to our care. So let us go forth on this first Creation Sunday to recommit ourselves to caring for the planet and to seeing God in the water and in all of creation. Namaste.